All right, we are live.
Okay.
I'll switch back to. Oh.
Hi.
Howdy.
Okay. Hey, Jess.
Hi, am I all like squished?
No.
Okay, great. Is anyone out here from the public? Can you see up my nose? Oh, it's recording. Good.
Yeah, you're on YouTube now.
Excellent. YouTube, it's an important thing to consider.
Karen's here.
Yeah.
Karen's the public.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Happy November. I will call to order this regular monthly meeting of the Village of Trumansburg Board of Trustees. Looks like all of the trustees are present. Our clerk is excused for the evening. Deputy Clerk Serene will be taking any notes we might need. We have a relatively, knock on wood, a lighter agenda, but there are several items for executive session at the end, which we will have to go through when we get there. Are there any changes to the agenda, however, at this point?
Quick change. Chris Fox I thought he was going to join in the meeting to discuss, and we can go over it during my report. So maybe we don't need to change the agenda, but hopefully he will be here for at least a brief moment.
Okay. I know there was a fairly serious call this evening in front of Little Venice, so that may take up some time. Any other changes? I know Karen is actually here to talk about taking care of T-Bird, so we'll address that under my report fairly high up in the evening. Anything else to add or delete? Okay, if not, we have minutes to approve from our October 13th meeting. They are in the Dropbox. If hopefully everyone's had a chance to take a look. And if someone would like to move those minutes for approval.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve our meeting minutes from October 13th. Any edits, comments, questions? Hearing none, then all in favor of accepting the minutes as presented from our October 13th meeting, please say aye.
Hi.
Any opposed?
Aye.
And those meeting minutes are adopted, or accepted, rather. Let's see. Someone looking to enter the meeting. Our next item on the agenda is our public comment period, privilege of the floor. And I do see a couple of members of the public. If unless there's a specific item on the agenda that you wanted to comment on later on, now would be the time. If let's see. Well, Karen, if you have anything other than taking care of T-Bird business to comment on, now is the time. I see Dolores has joined us. And I think Mark is here for the town, but certainly welcome to speak as well if either of the three of you have anything you'd like to comment on. Yes, Dolores.
There.
Yeah, I just want to thank the village for doing a good job at advertising the closing streets for Halloween, or some of the streets, for a better social distancing and keeping folks apart. I thought that was a great idea. I don't know who came up with it, but it was a great idea. And I think it was successful, at least on the Bradley Street end of town. And yeah, I'm thinking maybe we ought to do that next year too, regardless, because it certainly kept the car traffic down for people that are wandering around with kids, because we normally get a lot of cars in our neck of the woods. And so, because people would, go down and park at the end of the street and then do their rounds or whatever. And yeah, I think it worked out really great at our end of the neck of the woods. So I want to thank the village for putting that together and getting the notices out. That was great. Yeah, good job.
Well, thanks, Dolores. Appreciate that. Yeah, we've had some good feedback on Halloween in general. So that's definitely something we'll have to think about for next year, whether to make it whether to start a brand new tradition. But I appreciate that, Dolores. Thank you. Yeah, Karen.
Gordon, this is aside from taking care of T-Burg. If I could announce, the Gem Shop is having a really exciting holiday raffle this year.
Yeah.
We have purchased over 45 $50 gift certificates, all from local Trumansburg businesses that we're going to raffle off in a raffle starting November 23rd. We thought this was on our 50th year, a good year to give back to some local businesses in this way. The full list will be appearing online and in our window soon, but it's the restaurants, the veterinary clinics, all the stores. So it's going to be an exciting raffle. Tickets are $2 a piece. They'll be available at the store, and it starts November 23rd.
That's great. November 23rd. And how long does it run?
Oh, it goes to the 12th. And I forgot to say, and all the proceeds that we make will go to the Trumansburg Food Pantry. So.
Great.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Karen, I'm sorry. I have a question. I think I might have misheard. The local businesses donated gift certificates?
No, we thought this was not a good year to ask them to donate. So the Gem Shop has purchased the gift
Oh, my
certificate.
goodness. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm glad I asked.
Trumansburg being Trumansburg, as we went around soliciting buying the gift certificates, several of them, of course, wanted to donate it, and we did not let them do that this year.
Oh, you didn't? Okay. Great all around. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Any other public comment? Going once. If you think of anything else, there is another public comment period at the end, if you feel like sticking around till then. But we will move on to item number 5 on the agenda, which is reports from representatives. I do see Ann Corman here from the county, as well as Mark Devakaitis from the town of Ulysses. If either of you would like to lead off, please feel free.
I'll go ahead. I don't have much. We passed our budget at the end of the month. And the meeting tomorrow night, we're having a public hearing on fire services, to which the other towns who receive fire services from the village are invited to. So we'll see how that goes. There's not too much to say about new business. I've been pretty busy with the budget. I know Deb had been asking about the Cemetery Road Bridge project the last time I was at a meeting, which was a few months ago. All I really know about that is that we're about halfway through the $150,000 that's been allocated for the work. That's kind of, so we're about halfway paid. I don't know what that means in terms of how much work is done, but it's certainly progressing. So we should see that come to completion throughout this next year. Anybody have any questions about anything from the town?
I actually do. So I'll be asking lots of questions for at least a year as I understand more of what happens. So this public hearing about the fire services, is this something that happens annually?
I believe so, yes.
And so it's a chance, what's sort of the agenda? What's this meeting like? What's the,
Well, I haven't been to it before either. I know that the parties have all gotten together to discuss this previously with the village. So I think this is just when the budget has been adopted, or before it's been before it's been fully formally adopted. I guess there's one more chance to talk about it. I'll really be able to tell you a lot more after tomorrow night about that. So.
and what time is it tomorrow? I'm sure it's on the website, but you're here.
Starting at 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock. Okay, and so also, Mark, you had asked for, I have all of the fire reports that you requested, some of which had already been submitted, but maybe went by the wayside. So I will get the bulk of that to you tomorrow before your meeting.
That's great. Thank you so much for taking care of that. I couldn't find any that went to me, but.
Well, and it's wacky. I mean, so I, Matt, I'm not sure if he's on the meeting yet. He meant to be. He had all of the reports. Some were sent by Chief Fulton Pryor, and some he had sent to Michael Boggs. So we can address in the email if there's a better way, if those are getting lost somehow. But certainly I have it for you. And he was extremely quick in responding. So I think that's good for the future.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions for Mark? Okay, thanks, Mark. And Jess, I'll just say that town law requires that when a town contracts with an agency for fire protection such that there is a line item tax on the town tax bill for that protection, then they are required to have a public hearing to discuss. It's essentially it's an additional ad valorem tax, so they have to have a public hearing to give the public a chance to say we don't want that tax, right, or yes, we support that tax. And so it is an annual thing because our contract runs annually.
It does seem a little strange to be doing it after we had already approved the budget, but so this is always time for amendments and things. So.
Anne, if you are available.
Sure. I wanted to also thanks folks that helped with the Halloween events. I didn't go to it, but I heard it was a great success and kept kids and adults off the streets. So I think that's always a good thing. I also wanted to thank,
or in the streets,
or I guess you were in the streets, but supervised. So I also wanted to thank Dolores and other folks that helped out with the election. I didn't hear of any issues in the county, so that is really good. I heard everything went really smoothly. And this week we are starting to, or the Board of Elections is counting the absentee ballots. Now, you don't hear about that as much as you hear about that in other states because most elections weren't that close, but we still have a number of semi-local and state positions that haven't been decided yet. So we will be, I believe we have up till the 20th to finish counting. So that could take a little while, but maybe they'll go through it sooner. So let's see what else we have. As far as COVID, unfortunately, the numbers keep going up. So we have 57 active cases right now of people with the virus, people that we're monitoring, and there's 5 in the hospital. Luckily, we haven't had any more deaths, just the one death. But it is getting scarier because the winter and people being closed up. So of course, we're reminding people, please try to socially distance, wear a mask, not to have gatherings, or to at least limit the number of gatherings that you're going to. We are still offering free COVID tests if it's not covered by your employer or your organization or your insurance. So please tell people, there shouldn't be any reason and that you can't get a test if you still need one. And just as a reminder, I haven't said this in a while, if people have transportation issues, you can get free transportation. You can get a ride to go get a COVID test And all of that is, you can get more information by calling 211. We are heavily encouraging people to get the flu shots for a couple of reasons, because if you do get the flu shot, that could make you more susceptible to getting COVID. And if nothing else, it could cause people to get more tests or be more worried because you're not sure what you have, because a lot of the symptoms are the same. And let's see, the tentative budget for the county. We are having our hearing tomorrow night. So we finished our tentative budget. Our hearing is tomorrow night at 7. If anybody's interested in going to that, you would contact our county legislative clerk, Kathy Covert, to get an invitation to get into the Zoom meeting, or you could send, of course, email, or you can call me and pester. You can call me at any time if you have some input. I'll give you the quick synopsis. We reduced the workforce by 47 positions because we are down, I think, $7 or $8 million this year. And so we reduced the workforce by 47 positions. I think every single one was able to find another position, either in the county or they took advantage of our early retirement. So that is good. And overall, for our budget for this year, we're proposing an increase of 2.21% increase, and that's in the whole budget amount. But the tax rate for property owners is actually a decrease of 1.61%. So you'll see your rate drop. And that gives us a rate of $6.21 per thousand. And the median in priced home would see an increase of $42.77. And that's because our property values keep going up quite a bit. So we're having our hearing tomorrow night, and then we'll vote on our final budget on the 17th. And this week we also recognized Veterans Day, which is tomorrow. We had a proclamation for that. One for Home Care Aid Appreciation Week. And also November is Native American Heritage Month. So I wrote up a proclamation for that. And we had Sachem Sam George is the chief of the Cayuga Nation. So he was able to attend our meeting and say a few words for that. And I think those are the main issues.
Thank you. Any questions for Ann? Okay, well, thank you, Ann. We will also be shortly, we'll be discussing the broadband resolution, which we have not yet adopted. So we'll hopefully have an update for you on that here in a few minutes.
Okay, if I could just add one more thing I thought of.
Sure.
Along with the budget, it was a long process. Again, I try to summarize it, but one thing I just wanted to add is we have been building up our reserves over many years. So part of what we've done is take most of the deficit in our budget and take that out of our reserves. And knock on wood, we're anticipating being able to do that for another 2 or 3 years to really, to try not to raise the property or to minimize any raising of the property taxes. So overall, we're in pretty good financial shape. What happens at the state level, of course, we can't predict.
Okay. Well, if there are no questions for Mark or Ann, we'll move on to item number 6 on the agenda, which is our various board member reports, starting with myself, but I'm going to let Karen go first to chat about taking care of T-Berg and some things she wanted to bring to our attention.
Okay, thanks, Warden. Vicki and I got an email, I guess about a month ago, right, Vicki, about the County Beautification Fund, which is funded by the room tax, obviously is really hurting for money since the hotel and motel business has dropped so much around here since COVID. And that being the case, the money they're going to be able to give out to cover expenses like taking care of T-Berg, they expected to be able to provide 45% of what they've normally covered. So when I got that, I was in touch with Vicki, and I just wanted all of you to be aware of it, only because I'm not quite sure how that's going to play out. I think, Vicki, this year looks okay, right? But they're thinking there'll be the same issue next year.
Well, the one that I submitted in September was for 1920. So what has already been
20.
spent for 2021, any bills that we had for 2021, which generally don't come in till the spring, that will apply for after we're done with our budget year in May. So at this point, I don't think the county knows, unless Ann does, what they're doing about reimbursement for the beautification. That's the way I read the email, Karen.
Mm-hmm.
Is that they're hoping it's 45% next year, but.
So in anticipation of that, I guess, I'll certainly talk with all of the people that are involved with taking care of T-Berg, and I certainly wanted the board to be aware of it. It would be unfortunate if we no longer could do the planners, could no longer do the things we do along Main Street. We're not talking about a huge amount of money, but it's a tough financial time, obviously, for everybody, the village and the county and everything else. So, we will next year have, our expenses will be a little more than this year because we need to restain the planners. That was supposed to happen this year, but couldn't because of COVID. We need to build some more planners. That costs a little bit more money. And then just the regular expenses of plants and soil and that type of thing. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about that, but I just know I personally hope that taking care of T-Berg will be able to see it through this kind of a bit of a tough time and keep going strong. I think it's an important part of the T-Berg community.
Yeah, I certainly agree, Karen. I don't, unless there's something I'm missing, I don't see there's any reason why we wouldn't be able to find the funding for what you need. Your email said that your direct expenses this year were around 900 and change.
Right, about 928 this year. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, certainly open to whatever the board, any comments from the board, but I don't think for that kind of, I think we're more than getting the village's bang for its buck, given all of the work that you all do. So I don't see that there would be any reason why we wouldn't be able to find the money for that.
Oh, that's great to hear, Gordon. Thanks. That's great to know.
The other thing, Gordon, that you just need to, is we also deal with the Tagana Garden Club, who does our front porch, and they do the signs, the 3 signs coming into town, and theirs is probably a little less than taking care of T-Berg. I think it's on probably in the vicinity of maybe about $750, $800.
Okay.
So as I said to Karen, I have it in my notes to discuss it during budget time too.
Sure. Any other board comment?
I'll just
or questions for Karen?
I'll just second that point. I think that's the kind of thing that, is a very easy bang for the buck kind of situation. So I'm in favor of finding that money somewhere or another.
That's great to hear. Thanks, you guys.
Karen, don't you usually somebody buys like coffee or food for the group every time you meet?
Well,
or it's donated?
The Powers Dennis household provides the food, so we're glad to do that. Gimme used to provide the coffee, and as of this past year, with some of their corporate changes, they said they were no longer able to do that. So this year, it would have, if we'd been able to meet regularly, it would have been water instead of coffee. But
I mean, we don't have to have a discussion about it now, but things like that maybe the village could throw in for the volunteer effort long term. Seems like refreshments for the crew that assembles might be a nice thing that we can do too.
Well, like I said, we're glad to provide that. Jim and I are.
Burn Dairy actually may be interested in, or maybe willing to provide coffee if you're looking for that specifically. So that may be a conversation to have at some point with them.
Oh, really? Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, I was also just thinking, Gordon, in addition to that, I mean, there's several other area local coffee roasters too. And I don't want to put a ton of effort into securing coffee necessarily, but I think there's a plenty of people who would appreciate that. And looking at the number, if you're talking about like $525 to meet the deficit towards 1,000, that sounds definitely like something we should all get behind.
I think we should ask
If there's
John
ever-
Gann to just go down there and grind some beans every time.
Ask who?
John Gann,
Oh, right.
grind them up.
If there's ever anything whose effort is worth securing, I think coffee's got to be near the top of that list. Well, good. Any other questions for Karen? Okay, so
Thank you.
first item under my report is this broadband study resolution. We had discussed it briefly at our meeting. Last month, we wanted to wordsmith a few things, as well as I inquired of Anna Kellis of the Tompkins County Legislature about the possibility of expanding the scope of STN study to include the full Trumansburg School District. Now, Schuyler County is already a member of STN, so that portion of the school district is already covered. But I was able to obtain a school district map and pass it along, and it's not a lot of Seneca County. It's I forget what the cutoff is. Booth Road, Powell Road, somewhere in that neighborhood is where the school district cutoff is. And STN did agree, or Fujitsu did agree, to include them in the scope of the study. So with that in mind, I'm not only in favor of passing the resolution in support of the study, but I think we should consider budget considerations, of course, being what they are, but I think we should consider contributing to the cause. Now, the town of Ulysses, Nancy wanted me to pass along that the town of Ulysses has not only adopted the resolution, but also has pledged $3,000 to the effort. Most of the other municipalities who are chipping in the $5,000 number is what they're looking at. Ulysses settled on $3,000 and is hoping that the village can kick in the additional $2,000 for a combined $5,000. I told her I thought that was very generous and that we would certainly consider it. So I think there's two questions. One is there any reason not to support the resolution? Or rather, is there any reason not to support the study itself via resolution? And then the second part of that question is how much, if anything, should we contribute to the effort?
I mean, I said at the last meeting, but I'll just reiterate, I'm 100% in favor of this. I think if COVID has taught us nothing, it's the importance of broadband and connectivity in general, especially for rural communities that are outside of our own. And I know there's a little bit of inside outside of the village going on here, but I mean, we are a small community. I think it's important that this happen, and I'm fully on board. I would have been happy to, be at the $5,000 mark. If 2,000 combines with the town to get us there, I think that's fine too.
You're completely in favor of supporting it.
Ben or Keith?
I'm in favor as well. My only thought is, right, do we go more than 2? Honestly, I think I had a number higher than that in my head. So Ann's giving the thumbs up. Yeah. So yes, in favor, and 2, if not more. Maybe see what other people say.
Agree with everything everyone said. Happy to increase that amount as well. I mean, we say that, but I guess understanding that where we're at with our own budget, I guess, might be something we should probably consider. But in general, going above 2 definitely sounds It's like something I would agree with. 5, I could do 5.
Wait, how many? I'm sorry. How many municipalities are involved? It's an $80,000 study. How many municipalities are involved?
I am not sure how many of Tompkins, maybe Ann knows, I'm not sure how many of the other Tompkins County municipalities have agreed to chip in at this point.
I'll try and look it up. I think maybe four others, possibly 5 at the most, have agreed.
And who bears the brunt of the shortfall? How is it funded?
The county has agreed to do that, the balance of the, what could be up to 80,000. I
Okay.
think, I will say this to you guys, because you're my district, part of my district, that personally, if you only went to 2,000, I would be okay, because there's going to be other things that come up, like, I see you helping out, the beautification program that the county has lost funding for a lot of programs because of the room tax. There's going to be various things are going to be happening that people might come to you for locally. So you're going to need that buffer too. So whatever you decide is perfectly okay.
So there are a couple of considerations in here. First, I'm personally, in case it wasn't clear, I'm personally very supportive of this. I think this plays into one of my many soapboxes with respect to availability of services as being one of the reasons that this particular area, and by area I mean the northwestern corner of Tompkins County, is very attractive for people to move here. So there's school district issue, of course. We have a great school district, but between water and sewer within the village, but then also the availability of things like fire protection, ambulance, I think broadband is quickly showing itself to be in that same conversation. So I'm certainly supportive, even though the study doesn't particularly affect the village directly, because we already have two broadband providers. As for the dollars, the resolution is worded that the dollars would be committed in 2021. So in theory, that gets us into next budget year for allocating the dollars. We don't have to necessarily scrape to find the pennies in the proverbial couch between now and May. We can budget for it for our June 1 budget year. And then third piece is, I would think we should at least match what Ulysses does. If we feel like going a little bit higher, then I'm okay with that too. But at least a matching piece to what Ulysses has already contributed seems like the minimum.
If I could chime in, I believe what I can find so far is that we have $25,000 confirmed from municipalities.
Yeah, I think I was leaning matching was where my head was at as well.
Yeah, I like matching. 3,000.
Keith or Ben Carver?
I'm fine with that. Yeah, should I move the?
Sure, unless there's any additional conversation, or we can have more conversation. If someone would like to move the resolution as written with a dollar amount to be inserted with your motion.
So I would move we adopt this resolution as presented with $3,000 in the last resolved paragraph.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any additional comment or discussion?
I would just say thanks for tuning it up, Royden. That was good. I'm happy that this moved along. I think this is I think it's quite important.
Sure thing. Anyone else? Comments, questions? Okay, well, hearing none, then all in favor of this resolution as proposed, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And the motion carries. Terrific. The next item under my report is simply a very brief update on the Governor's Executive Order 203. And yes, Dolores.
Just a quick comment. Thank you, Board of Trustees, for voting for that. I think what everybody is saying about broadband is really significant, and that they're just, not only is the area, we're getting, more people coming in, but there are still many people who, can't afford internet. And then, hopefully the COVID thing, goes away, within reason, but, it could be here for another year. And if we still have issues where people have to stay home or kids have to stay home from school, it makes it difficult for many families not to have access to internet because, kids are being sent home with, laptops or iPads or whatever, and to do work from home. And if they don't have access, they can't do it. And so, and families then too, you got to fill out an application now, online. So I think it's to our benefit to be able to offer this to everyone within the school district area to help them out in every way that we can. Thank you.
Thanks, Dolores. So just a very brief update on the governor's EO 203, the police reform initiative. We had our first meeting a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago now, which was an in-person meeting at the fire hall. We had 5 attendees. It was, I think, a very, very good meeting. There was a lot of comments and questions, suggestions, feedback. We already have a couple of takeaways from it in terms of something more concrete that the village might be able to do long term. So we'll keep the board apprised of those things as we put together kind of the initial draft of what we're going to produce. That'll be later in the fall. Well, November already. That'll be later in the year or early next year when we start to put together that draft. Our second meeting is actually tomorrow evening. This one will be virtual. We're expecting quite a few more attendees. We have 11 currently signed up. We will be doing, Keith and Chief Nelson and I, both in the last meeting and again tomorrow night, we'll be doing kind of an intro overview of the village police department. These discussions are intentionally narrowly focused on the village because that is our mandate from the governor, is to look at the needs of this community vis-a-vis this police department. So we're staying away from kind of broader discussions of what happens in other parts of the country. But to facilitate that, there's an introductory overview, a little bit of a history of the department, some of the things that this department does, and we're actually going to record that piece since it is going to be on Zoom. We're going to record that piece tomorrow night, and we'll make that available to everyone who wants to see it. We're not recording kind of the feedback Q&A portion. We want people to feel free to speak freely and offer their opinions without any concern, if for those that might have concerns about voicing their opinions in a public setting like that. So stay tuned for the introductory piece. That's it for me, at least in terms of public report. As I mentioned earlier, there are a number of items for executive session, which we will get to a little later. Unless there are any questions about either of those items, then I would certainly take those now.
Ooh, I raised my hand, but I'll lower it now. It's so hard to tell if people are going to do that or not. So if the video recording turns out well, Gordon, is that something that would be put on our website?
Yes, I think the idea is to make it available publicly for that kind of informational piece. It's not overly lengthy, but there are some interesting tidbits of information, particularly when it comes to call volume, types of calls, and of course, Chief Nelson's approach and philosophy of of operating and running a police department. So I think the intention is to make it publicly available.
Cool. Thanks.
Sure. Okay, so if there's nothing else for me, we will move on to Trustee Giles for a fire department and Trumansburg Chamber report.
Okay, so Trumansburg Chamber report is again very short. I've had a difficult time connecting with Stephen Daly, mostly just due to both of us having pretty big schedules. And I think on here we wanted to sort of talk about Winterfest. And so maybe it's actually beneficial that I haven't made direct contact with him because, you know, did we want to talk about how the village is feeling about the notion of Winterfest, mass gathering? Did we want to see how, I mean, I'm not sure what everyone is thinking about the safety, and I mean, Halloween was sort of a test, but I think we're in a bit of a different spot now with the school being closed through November. Corning's in the yellow zone. You know, what's our temperature for Winterfest?
So I'll just quickly comment that I added that under yours just simply to remind me that the village handed off organization of Winterfest several years ago for a whole host of reasons. And so I'm not, unless the board believes otherwise, I'm not volunteering anyone in the front office to take that back over, number one. Number two, certainly with ongoing gathering restrictions, I don't foresee those being lifted before the second weekend in December anyway. But even if they were, I wouldn't necessarily think that the village should step back into a role we happily handed off, in spite of the chamber's current situation. Again, unless everyone on the board feels strongly otherwise.
Well, and frankly, I'm not sure, and I don't want to be the only voice here, of course. I'm not sure that it's necessary. I mean, there was a committee, right? When I was on the Winterfest committee, when under the chamber. So if the chamber board itself is light, it doesn't necessarily mean that the community would be light on participating and pulling it off, right? But would it be permitted? I mean, would permits for this thing, which have to be approved, be actually approved? And I don't know if that's even answerable, but certainly, you know, it's November. December 7th is typically when it happens, right? So
yeah. So it certainly would have to be a permanent event. So I think there's two questions. One is it may be a moot point for this year, given the gathering restrictions, and we will get questions about it, and it'll be easy to say that that's the reason why. But I think there's actually a broader conversation about anything, and Winterfest is the only one that comes to mind at the moment. But because it's something that the village did run at one point in time, whether or not, and I'm suggesting not, but could be convinced otherwise. Certainly, I'm suggesting, or the question is rather, what would or would not the village ever want to pick up in terms of the slack if things drag on for another year as far as the chamber and organizing events and whatnot. We sort of stepped into it. We sort of stepped into the breach for doing some organizing with Halloween. And I think it went very well, but I don't know that we necessarily want to get in the habit of doing that.
sure, and you know, All Hallows Eve is a different sort of situation than an arbitrary celebration in December. But we give money, right? Doesn't the village give money typically to Winterfest?
We've always done an in-kind donation via police.
It's in kind.
Police time.
Okay.
So I've been thinking about this a little bit because I was still with the chamber when they made the decision to not organize it this year. One, I think clearly this year is going to be a very different year and probably a wash. And knowing that, you know, I know this tradition goes back a long ways, but in the time I've been here, I know that the whole closure of Route 96 continues to be a little bit of a headache of sorts. And that's why Winterfest can only be 3 hours long. And it seems like a lot of planning for a 3-hour party. So I've been thinking this will be a longer discussion, but I was not there, but from what I heard, the Halloween event at the fairgrounds went really well. And so two things. One, could we partner with that group to offer some sort of Winterfest type drive-through experience? And by partner, I don't necessarily mean give money or people power, but at least broach the conversation. And two, does it actually make more sense long term to use the fairgrounds for a Winterfest where you're not held back by the limitations of closing down Main Street, and you could have more space and have more vendors and have more food? The Winterfest that I've been to always features a lot of people trying to cram in for a slice of pizza, and that's about your only option unless you want to go to Little Venice and stuff like that. So I don't know, could it, if we got a committee back together, and the feeling I got on the chamber was that it had become kind of a committee of one that was doing so much of the planning. And so could we invite a broader committee, get more people involved in this committee if it were to be a little, to increase the scope of it a little bit if we use the fairgrounds versus, going with what we've done on Main Street. It's nice to be on Main Street. It's nice to be right in our business district, but I could also see a lot of benefit to having more space and being able to do more activities and longer hours in a situation like that. So that's just my thoughts on a Winterfest now and the future.
So I'll just throw in my 2 cents. My feeling about Halloween, which by the way, I've received a lot of really positive feedback about as well. But my feeling was less that the village was stepping in and organizing an event, and more that we were providing sort of safety rails for an event that we knew was going to happen anyway. And my thinking would be that we would continue to do that. So if there was another organization that needed our help or that reached out, I mean, events like this happen in non-COVID times all the time, and we don't, we don't take over organizing those things. So I would approach it all with that kind of a lens. If Winterfest, if the chamber wants to take it on, or some other enterprising individual or group wants to take it on, I'd be supportive, and certainly hope that the village could help make that safe and safe and fun for everyone, and to the extent that we're able. But I wouldn't want to step back into the role of organizing something like Winterfest as a village. I don't think that was enjoyable for anyone when we were doing that.
And Keith, I'm sorry, the chamber already announced it was not going to do Winterfest. Like, that's a public announcement that happened.
But they announced that they were not going to organize it, that they were not going to be the organizing body.
And there's a void. Nobody has stepped in and said, we'll do it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much of a public announcement it was, but the board had decided several months ago that it was not in position to be the organizing body for Winterfest.
Okay, well, without sucking up too much more meeting necessarily about Winterfest, it's good to know. I didn't realize that it had already been decided by the chamber to not do it. So that's saves one extra conversation on my part. And the other is that I think the benefit of having Winterfest happen in the corridor, the business corridor, is to drive attention to the business corridor, and is one of those chances for people who might not otherwise go into local businesses to visit local businesses. So asking them to all pack up a table or a hot truck to get to the fair is now suddenly a very different kind of event. Not to say that that isn't the direction it would want to go, but I'm wondering if we all might think, and maybe then expect potentially an email from me following up saying, in the absence of an actual festival, what could we do to encourage light and joy on our streets through window decoration contests, just asking people to participate that way? Because I know that it's disheartening when we drive, don't you know, you drive through dark villages and then you come back to ours and you're like, oh, Winterfest, everyone decorated. Look, there's that tree. Like, you just, I think it's an especially important time to see if we can promote that. But I guess that's a separate topic, and I can hit you all up and see who wants to be a committee, or encourage someone
As long
in
as
the
it-
community who's listening to.
As long as
take
it doesn't
on.
include really bad holiday music. Just
I'm
unlike
gonna need a budget for speakers on the street, and it's gonna be Kenny and Dolly's Christmas to Remember 24/7.
please God no.
So one thing to add to that, Jess, and for the board is I've been thinking for several months now about what the village should do if, this is not a prediction, if we don't have a working chamber to work with at any point in the future. There have been conversations for years about the chamber reevaluating or reimagining its vision. You know, what does a chamber of commerce in the 21st century do? I'm certainly not going to tell them how to run their organization. However, if for any reason, if this was not a COVID year and we still had a void of community organization around that, I think that would be a shame. And I think it would be something that would probably fall to the village to try to either fill or volunteer some people to fill in some way. So that's, again, not a discussion for tonight, but I think it's something we should be giving some thought to as we look at things like tourism and what makes Trumansburg attractive to move here from a utility standpoint. All of those things, I think the cultural piece you can't let that slide too far without someone or something or some organization stepping in.
Yeah, and thank you for those words, Warden. Also, Keith, I kind of meant to say that it redesigned itself to be a committee of one, and it certainly hadn't been that for several years. There were many of us from the business district and the library who were helping to put the event on, and then a certain individual just sort of said, "I just kind of want to do this on myself." So I think there's definitely, and Dolores and Karen, if she's still here, can certainly comment that we have an engaged community who can be called upon, as Warden said, voluntold or simply asked. So with that, I'm going to speak about the fire department, which is
Sorry,
a fantastic.
could I actually throw in one last thought on?
Yes,
before-
sorry, I can only see one face at a time, so I apologize
fine.
if you're all like looking.
I was just going to say that as much as I kind of struggle with the farmers market structure as a committee of the village, but also its kind of own independent thing, it could also be a bit of a model just to consider in if we need to kind of go down that route of some of a quasi-independent events subcommittee kind of thing where the village is kind of there, but we're not trying to take on upon ourselves or the front office staff a significant additional burden, but more of a kind of guidance perspective and having an active board under it. So just a thought as a possible model if we have to go that way.
That's great.
Great, thanks, Ben.
Did anyone else want to comment on Winterfest before I move on to the fire report? And what led me there is that they are still planning on doing letters for Santa. So they are figuring out how might be best and safest, and some version likely of written as well as virtual. And they have a great committee of one, but there's more people that help her that are really leading that. And so that was really great to hear about. They're also talking about other ways to fundraise. They're watching what other communities are doing beyond a pass the boot scenario, and are exploring some of what those things might be, which will lead me to ask a question of our village attorney about what sort of gambling license we have, if gambling can happen. So I'll just send an email explaining that more. And I'm also not clear, Gordon, if you want to, coming from the planning board, I sort of had this ability to ask significant questions directly, but his time is money. So is the proper procedure that I email you a question, someone needs if I have a legal question, and then you tell me how to proceed?
We have never had any restrictions on trustees' access to village council, only that the trustees are responsible for building the budget. So we hope that a trustee won't break it.
Okay.
But if it's games of chance, raffles, or gambling, for reasons not to be disclosed tonight, I may have some knowledge on that. If you want to run it
Sure.
by me,
Yeah,
and if
great.
I'm not sure, I can run it.
There
by
also
you guys.
still there are some ideas thrown around, and so I will need to get a little bit more information before I come back to you. But that was great.
New
It
York-
was
New
just
New
exciting.
York State.
Go ahead.
New York State gaming law is actually very cut and dry on certain things. Surprisingly so for New York State. So we can probably find the answer without Guy's expensive time.
And actually, here's a question I should ask. Could any member of the public go into not the executive session, but there's the session of the fire company? Can anyone off the street walk into that meeting? Or is that a closed door event?
Technically, because they're not a public corporation, but as a not-for-profit, you could attend as a member of the public.
Okay.
Unless for some reason they were to ask you to leave.
Okay, great. And I'm sure Matt isn't here because there was, I believe you addressed that there was an accident, I think. Okay. So the other stats, we had 5 calls this month for the village, 10 calls for the town, 6 to covert, 0 to Hector, and 5 calls were out of district. Year to date, we have 202 calls. So I will work with you, Rorden, and also Matt, to see if there's any sort of standard reporting that we all like to see, that like the town likes to see. And now I have, as I mentioned to Mark, access to those reports, which are pretty concise and super easy. What else do I want to say? Oh, they secured a grant from Walmart for some PPE, $5,500. So I think that for me, it being my first fire company meeting, it was they're a fabulous group, and they're definitely keen on recognizing that they might have projects that they want to do that are out of the financial capacity or of the village, and so being independent when they can and successful at it. I think that you do know that they did not get the grant for the radios, so they will be exploring another avenue for that. That is it, unless anyone's interested in all the various trainings and want to become a volunteer firefighter. I highly encourage that. Oh, they did just take on 3 new volunteers, one of whom is a woman who graduated from Hobart and William Smith and is coming to us from Seneca County Fire Department, and Alex Kristoff is the Seneca County Fire Inspector. Is that right? Don't quote me on that, but she just got a promotion to a pretty substantial achievement, which I think I wanted to shout out. That's it for fire.
Great. Any questions for Jessica? Thank you, Jessica. Yes.
Can I ask Jess a question? The grant from Walmart, Jess, is that the fire company that got it or the department?
I'm sorry, the fire company or the what?
Or the fire department?
Ooh, that's a very good question, and I'm sorry. I can't answer that, but I can follow up with Greg. I can follow up with Dan Shear. And I'm sorry, she's the new Seneca County Fire Instructor, not Inspector. Oh, I almost forgot one other great thing. His name is Justin Van, right? Lieutenant Van, who is also the county fire coordinator. He wanted to just weigh in that he's received such great feedback on how successful our company is in responding to calls and to being cooperative with other municipalities, and that he felt that it was pretty unique that he had received specifically this feedback from other organizations in the county. So thanks for giving me that extra opportunity, Vicki. Do you have any more questions? I might think of other stuff.
No, it's just that if it's the department, then we administer it. If it's a company, then they administer it. So
then it's probably the company. It came during the company thing, but
okay.
And I don't recall if I mentioned this or if I emailed the board, but you can pass back through. I think I told Matt, but if I didn't, you could, Jessica, pass back through to the fire company. I heard I got a couple of compliments, one in particular from an officer of another fire company, highly complimentary of Trumansburg Fire Department and fire company, specifically around the back-to-back early morning structure fires a couple weeks ago, and how professional everyone was. And this individual told me that you never want to go on a call, obviously, for the reasons that you're going for, but he looks forward to working with our fire company members whenever a call comes in. So I thought that was nice.
I will certainly convey that. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Jessica? Okay, we will move along then to EMS Youth and Street Tree Advisory.
So starting with the tree committee, we spent most of our last meeting working on strategies for next spring and next year and next season, and going over different ways that we could approach that. And it looks like I had mentioned the possibility of planting some trees around the village. It looks like, and this will be news for you, Karen, too, but I just talked with Tony Elmore, and it sounds like we have missed our window for that this year, unfortunately. So we'll have to come up with something else for next spring, I guess. For youth, I don't actually have much to report other than, like I said earlier, the committee and everyone sort of involved was really, really happy with Halloween. There was a lot of really positive feedback that I was really happy to hear, because I didn't go out. So I was sad that I didn't get to experience it myself when I heard all of these glowing reviews. But that was definitely, I think that was a really important thing for a lot of people. So good job. The one piece of bad news I have to share is that the alternative school program is having a hard time finding an alternative location. I think I had reported to you guys that they were going to be at the Nature Center, but that did not work out in the end. Then they were going to be at the conservatory, but there were too many fragile things for children with balls to be throwing, and all of that kind of thing. So if anyone has any ideas for big open spaces that are mostly heated or anything like that, that would be great. As far as I know, as of last Tuesday, they're still looking. So any thoughts would be really appreciated. And then I will move on to EMS. And the first thing is on the agenda, which is that we are done with the old 1852. So that I guess I will move that we declare the 2008 Chevy ambulance of no further use to the village.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. So the new 1852 is here. I have not seen it myself yet. Supposed to stop over in the next couple of days. It sounds like it is just what the doctor ordered, so to speak. And yes, so by declaring the old 1852 of no further use, we will be able to, Ben, do we have a plan as far as selling or auctioning or?
It will go, I believe,
scrapping?
Chris, is that you on there? I think Chris is on this call now, or on this meeting now, but it's going back to the company that we bought the ambulance from. So it's a trade-in deal. I believe that is how it was resolved. I wouldn't swear to that, but I believe that's going, and that was the way Chris negotiated pretty effectively, I thought. So that was the best move. So I believe it's either gone or already on its way, actually, at this point.
Is that Chris, the mystery iPhone participant?
I believe it is. He said he was joining. Chris, can you hear us?
Don't think that's
It
him.
was traded in and it is gone.
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Vicky.
You're welcome.
That is Chris. You're muted, just so you're aware. I don't know if that was clear.
It is Chris. I just got a message. Well, in any case, Chris is actually involved in the next segment. So we'll, oh wait, no, we didn't vote, did we?
No, not yet. So we have a motion and a second to declare old 1852. Sounds like a brand of something. Old 1852 of no further use to the village. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any
That's a
opposed?
Scotch, isn't it?
And it carries unanimously. Let me see if I can rename this mystery iPhone as Chris Fox.
I'm just sending him a message. Although maybe you can hear me.
Okay.
So the next thing is actually, I'm just noticing, is not on the agenda, but it is in the Dropbox, which is the EMS charts proposal that I had mentioned last month, and is the reason that Chris is here to talk. So as you'll remember from last month, the basic sketch Now he's gone
Yeah, you just
completely.
Which one are we looking at, Ben? Is it the 1 year or the one that says with facts?
It is. Hold on.
You also got 2 different digit codes on there.
I didn't actually know there were 2. I only saw the one. What are the prices?
What's the name of the file?
It's the very bottom. It shows up on my computer as Trumansburg quote, but it's Trumansburg
okay.
EMS 1 year.
With facts. 1 year?
Oh, so
Ben,
it's,
can you hear me now?
hey,
Yes.
there
We
you go.
got you, Chris.
Very good. So Chris, we are just getting to the introduction of the EMS charge, which is where I was hoping you could chime in a little bit and just talk about the value to the
Certainly.
department.
So initially we had a charting system because we all have to be electronic PCRs for state of New York compliance. Electronic charting is all of the documentation and subsequently the billing process that we use for all of our EMS runs. It's a computer-based software that's used. What we started off with was with a pilot program that was put out with in conjunction with a stroke center in Central New York as a pilot program. And we got that for free to begin with. And this was our introduction into electronic charting. The software that they used to compile all this data for stroke information was minimal at best. And we've all gone to electronic charting. We want to use EMS charts, which is a different type of software, more widely used throughout the EMS community. It's a lot more user friendly. It really helps you write a better chart. And what I mean by that is some of our charts are written with the information that is in this image trends software. And it's sometimes it doesn't have all the information that you need. So you kind of have to use some gray areas of chart reporting, which could be a legal problem down the road. And it's super not user friendly as far as anything reports. Certainly doesn't send the information to the hospitals like it needs to, like it should. With going to EMS charts, almost the same money, we'll be able to, the crew will be able to write a PCR, write a chart, and have that automatically forwarded to the receiving hospitals. That way they have real-time information from us like they should, along with some really good structured reporting. The reporting system in image trends, Ben can attest to this, was super difficult to try and even navigate, and just way too convoluted. The EMS charts reporting is fluent and really, really easy to use, so we can get some good data out of the charts that we write.
And Chris, did you get any conclusion as far as the 3-year contract, whether that's upfront or?
It is, nope, it is, there's a startup fee, which I don't have in front of me, but it is something that is a monthly billable, it's not an upfront fee for a 3-year service. It's monthly, like we're paying quarterly now for image trends. So this would just be a nominal monthly fee, not all upfront.
Oh, well, that is different.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. And this is also, there's a process to be able to use software within Central New York in our region. And I have initiated that process and have been granted acceptance from CNY to be able to use the software. They have to actually give us permission to even use it, and they have.
So I think at this point, the sort of pertinent pieces, actually, it sounds like I had misunderstood to some degree. So we have two options, if assuming that we would like to move in this direction, which for me is a pretty clear case.
Yes.
But I'd be happy to take, actually, before we move on to the financial piece, are there questions about the software itself?
Chris, you mentioned CNY EMS. What about the other two?
Supported by them as well, Rorden. We only have to have authorization from Susie Supernaut. The other regions, this is the software that's used pretty much by every EMS entity out there.
Okay.
So the financial piece is essentially, I had actually misunderstood this. So you'll see in your Dropbox that there is a budget modification that, thank you for putting together, Vicky, to pay what I thought was an upfront cost, but it sounds like that is a monthly fee.
Yep.
Which is actually better or worse. So the problem with this is that we haven't budgeted for it. So it's not in our current budget, and it won't be in our budget until obviously we redo our budget. But as it stands, you said that bill is quarterly, Chris?
Right now, Image Trends is quarterly. EMS charge, which is what we want to go to, will be a monthly fee. I mean, I'm sure they would let us pay it all up front, but they'll do whatever we want as far as the fees.
I believe Image Trends
Ben
is
Carver.
yearly, Chris.
Say that again, Vicky, you were broke up.
I believe that Image Trends is a yearly. We get one bill once a year.
So I'm a little bit confused about the two documents in Dropbox right now, Ben. It looks like one is a 1 year, also billed monthly, and then there's another one that has the fax service, which is a 3-year or 36-month contract, also billed monthly. So which is the consideration? And if you, apologize, Chris, if you mentioned the benefit of faxing or not faxing to hospitals, is that something that this board should consider?
They actually, they
Go ahead,
both
Ben.
have faxing. I think that's
And
just
maybe the naming of the file led me to see that one didn't. But anyway,
Yeah.
one's 1 year and
Yeah.
one's 3 years. Are we committed to
So
having to sign 3 years?
that's actually, that's up for debate. I think there's some decrease in cost. It's about $30 a month if we go with a 1-year plan. I'm a little reluctant to go for 3-year plans because we haven't budgeted yet. And initially I thought this was going to be a lump sum payment, which is a lot harder to deal with. I still have some reservations just because 3 years is a long time to commit to something if it doesn't work. But certainly I would defer to Chris's judgment, I think, on that.
So a couple points to that, Ben. I think the better option for all of us is a 3-year plan because it's what we're going to be using, for the foreseeable future. With the ability to fax these charts into the receiving hospital is wonderful. Now, not to mention the time it's going to save with the providers not having to. We literally print the entire chart, which can be sometimes 50 pages. We scan it, and then we fax it into the hospitals, and then we have to shred all that. So in 15 minutes, you're shredding 50 pages of paper.
Shredding's tons of fun. So is scanning.
Right.
Just kidding. Yeah, I'm all in favor.
All tons of fun.
Chris, can I ask you a question as far as like in the office? Does this replace our current billing system that Morgan does?
It doesn't replace it. It actually is better used by medics. When you talk to Lynette, they prefer using EMS charts. It's a lot better for the system. It's a lot better for them.
So it does replace Image Trends.
Absolutely.
So
we would stop using it completely.
Okay, is in the contract, is there a line for training? I don't know about paramedics and EMTs, what you guys need to do, but for Morgan on her end, will there be some sort of training that's included in this contract?
Absolutely, and more so,
Okay.
it comes that really that part of it is something that's already built in with MedX. So what we'll do is we just simply tell MedX, hey, we're going to be billing through EMS charts. EMS charts and MedX handle it between the two of them, so that our billing never gets interrupted.
Okay, but we still do the billing from in the office.
Just like we are now, correct?
Got it.
It'd be-
Okay.
It'd be pretty much the same automatic process.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And then one other thing that I wanted to mention that Vicky had actually thought of and that we had talked about when looking at budgets was to actually take some of this budget to pay for the EMS charts from other parts of the budget, and in a reduction from other parts, like taking some money from training and some from the office to pay for this. So we're not increasing the budget. We're just taking it from a budget that we already have.
Right. So that's not relevant if we're paying monthly. So that if we're going to pay a lump sum, then we would need to do that budget modification. But if we're going to pay monthly, I think we can put it in the contractual line for the rest of the year, and we can include it in next year's budget.
Okay.
But that would cut Chris's contractual budget $2,500.
Either way, you don't have to budget mod now to make the decision. You
Ah.
can budget mod. You can budget mod at the end of the year.
Okay.
Budget, and it's worth making whatever adjustments we have to make in other areas to bring on EMS charts will be worth the effort to do that without increasing the budget.
So now that I bring this up, and now that the changes, I apologize, I didn't realize that. I'm not actually sure that I need a board motion if we are not paying a lump sum. Roran, do you know what the details are there? I don't think it's relevant anymore. I would certainly appreciate feedback from the board. But
I think for that annual spend, we should get a board approval to accept the quote. But we don't need a budget mod at this point.
Can I move to accept the quote?
Which one are you putting forward, Ben? The annual or the 3-year?
I will do 3-year. So the total is, I'm sorry, let me just open the right one quickly. Total will be $171.55 per month, or $2,058.60 per year, or $6,175.80 over the course of the 3 years.
And are you moving acceptance of that?
Yes. Thanks, Rick.
I second.
A motion and a second. Any additional discussion on EMS charts by Zoll Data?
I mean, if Chris is going to continue to make us efficient and a 21st century department, then I guess this is what we have to do.
You're right, Keith. Makes
Maybe so.
a big difference. It does.
Say for
Great.
our purposes as a board, this will be very, very helpful, just as far as data collection and that kind of thing. It will make a meaningful difference in my life and Roran's life at the very least. And I think the rest.
That is for sure. That is for sure.
You had me at scanning papers.
Exactly. It's mind numbing to watch
it
that
takes
much
so much
paper.
time. Yeah.
Everyone cringes.
Yeah.
Cringes. But there was no other way to do it.
I don't think we've actually voted yet. Gordon.
We have not. If there's no additional discussion, questions, and all in favor of accepting the 3-year proposal for EMS charts, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And it carries unanimously. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Anything more, Ben?
No, that is the end. Thank you all for bearing with me through that.
Ben, can you report back to the tree committee that we just saved some trees in paper reduction?
Yes.
I can't
Yes,
get
I
off
will.
the topic. It's so exciting.
That's good.
Okay, if there are no questions for Ben, we'll move on to a growing line here. DPW, water, sewer, CPZR, and farmers market. Take a deep breath.
Y'all buckle in for this. We're going to be here a while. No, I'll try and make it quick. I'll start with CPZR and farmers market because they're a little bit less intense. On the CPZR side, we are substantially done with the draft of the comp plan. We do have one or two small outstanding additions that we're working through. We're anticipating seeing an early draft of the final draft of a final draft. I don't know what you want to call it, but the EDR's actual representation of that draft back to us in a couple of weeks with our next meeting. We anticipate diving into zoning starting in November at our November meeting in 2 weeks. And that will kind of kick off our next thread of execution, while at the same time, we kind of slowly move forward rounds of reviews with this board and other boards and department heads and so forth on that comp plan draft, and start getting some external feedback on that. So that should be entertaining, and look forward to taking a look at that as the next months or go by here. On the farmers market side, the season's now complete. The farmers market did remarkably well, even despite COVID. I think they did remarkably well even in a regular year, is my understanding. So huge thank you to that board and the market manager. They've done a really incredible job in the face of a fairly challenging year. But I know a lot of people ended up kind of adjusting purchasing patterns and buying food and groceries at the market, and people did quite well. So that was good to hear. So then on to DPW, water and sewer, a bunch of different projects in flight. One I'll mention briefly is we talked about DPW laborers last month. I think we'll continue to talk about that in exec session, so stay tuned for that. On the footbridge, we have an update that Alan had mentioned his kind of idea for extending the bridge back up Gregg Street so as to stabilize the bridge and remove it from resting entirely on a kind of crumbling retaining wall. MRB has put together some different concepts around that and some cost estimates. Those are in the Dropbox. And I think this is not something for us to decide tonight, but it's something for us to I'd love to get a temperature of the room if possible. Something for us to kind of keep considering going forward. But we're kind of at a point where I think it's up to us to make a decision if we want to start entertaining moving forward with this. So the MRB put together some, like I said, some different ideas on how to extend the bridge. They've made a recommendation around one and put a rough estimate of somewhere in the neighborhood of $14,000. That would be, if we did the whole thing sent out somewhere else. I think what still needs to remain to be seen is how much of DPW can do that, how much of Allen and volunteers can do that. So I think that's a lot to still be considered, but I'd love to start having a sense of folks here if that number seems approachable, something that we want to try and make happen. I'm assuming at this point in the year, probably in the spring, though I guess that's kind of an assumption on my part. But just to reiterate kind of the design, basically the design is to, like I said, extend the bridge back up Gregg Street, connect that with a plate so there won't be welding, because that was some concern of the engineers, and just extend the bridge all the way back through there, and that would then support on kind of Gregg Street, support the bridge so that it would be off the retaining wall. And then later on, we can look at how to replace the retaining wall and address some of the drainage issues and other things that are going on there. So a couple pieces in flight, but I'd love to hear thoughts from the board if we're kind of talking about the right neighborhood of money at this point. And then I haven't even started to dig in as to where that might actually come, particularly from DPW budget or whatever else we might have available. So kind of stop talking there and open that up for a bit of a talk.
Initial thoughts, anyone?
I mean,
It's a lot more than the original estimate that came from the volunteer group of the village kicking in a few $1,000. But to your point, we don't know yet how much of that labor and whatnot could be done. But it's also a lot better than the original quote we got way, way back when we first had to close it. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess I'd be interested to see the difference in price between a more, with volunteer assistance versus the fully contracted. I mean, for restoring a footbridge, 14,000 doesn't sound ridiculous, but compared to what we have available in our budget, it might be ridiculous. So I'm not scared off by that number. I think that's where I stand right now, because I know a lot of people really want it, and especially the the retirement communities over there really benefit from it. So 14,000, I don't know, and maybe there's still some grants out there or something, but I'm not scared off by that number. I'll leave it at that.
I agree with that sentiment. I think it's certainly higher than I was hoping for. But any number you would have said is higher than I was hoping for. I think it would be unreasonable to expect that it would be anything less than that. And if we can knock it down further, then I'm certainly on board. I'll be there with my shovel,
Yeah, 14,000. It costs like 25,000 to dig a basement, right? So 14,000 to redo a bridge seems pretty skippy. Is volunteer labor even really realistic given construction insurance? But I guess worth exploring. I don't know. Did you mention the firm, or we? I apologize, Ben.
Yeah, so this is through our engineering firm MRB, and this isn't a quote. This is kind of their rough cost estimate, so we can have a conversation.
It's a cost estimate from MRB. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and so I'm looking at it a little more deeply. It's in the Dropbox, but it's they're guessing on the order of what's that, $7,000-8,000 just kind of for wood and beams and concrete and such. So I don't see us going much below that realm, but if it's stuff that DPW would feel comfortable kind of digging up and pouring, and having Alan and friends help with pouring concrete footers and placing things and that kind of a thing, there might be $5,000-ish that could come bring that. Maybe it comes down under 10,000. I don't know. I'm really kind of spitballing, just kind of based on the line items and breakout here. But I think that's kind of where I'm seeing the next step, is to start having those conversations and figuring out where we go from there.
Great.
Yeah, so I think, Ben, if you could, so when I look at the quote or the cost estimate, the part that I would want, with all due respect to Alan and company, the part that I would want to take very seriously in terms of contracting is the steel welding piece of it. If we're going to do the shear and splice recommended version, then we would want a steel fab contractor to do that piece of the work. Can DPW do the earthwork and the foundation and the coring? I think the answer is absolutely. It's just a matter of how to factor in the time they would need to do that piece. So if we're really looking at only contracting the actual steel splice piece for safety reasons and liability reasons, then we're also lowering the overhead and contingency piece. So I think you could probably, we could probably get it to 10. Between 8 and 10 seems reasonable. So I think the next piece is probably when you meet with, is it Jeremy?
I had an email from Matt today. We're going around trying to get people on the phone. I might just have a phone call, but we'll have some chats at some point this week.
I think Matt's in town tomorrow for something unrelated. So, but I think when you meet with Jeremy, then you can get a better idea of what the cost is. So I think the next piece is probably when you meet with, is it Jeremy? I think Matt's in town tomorrow for something unrelated. So I think when you meet with Jeremy, then you can get a better idea of what the cost is. So I think the next piece is probably when you meet with, is it Jeremy? I think Matt's in town tomorrow for something unrelated. So whether it's Matt or you, Matt and Dusty, to kind of figure out what DPW is capable of, regardless of what kind of time it takes. But if they're physically capable of it, then that's one piece. And then probably have to start looking at the steel contractors and see what they're willing to take on for a job that's really very small. That would be something they would have to kind of fit in somewhere. But then I think it's doable dollar wise.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that gives me enough to keep moving on. I feel like I've got kind of a sense of what are the next questions to be asked. So I'm hearing that this sounds intriguing enough. Let's start trying to move forward with it and figure out how DPW can slot in, and probably see if Dusty can start calling out to some steel workers and trying to put these things together and make it happen. So I will report back on where that gets us. Let's see. So from there, moving on to, we've got the sewer law draft update. So a couple weeks ago, Roden and I met with MRB again around the sewer law draft. For those that have sat down with it and pored over it, my apologies in advance. It is a long one, but by and large, most of that is pretty set in stone. I think Roden and I have talked through a couple, paragraphs here and there that might get adjusted. But as Roden has said a few times, that the piece that we have the most say over is around the billing and the pricing and kind of the fee schedule and so forth. And so that was where we had the most questions. Basically, MRB had kind of put just a stand-in there for now from another municipality. So we had some conversations around that. They are now working with Tammy to get some information about our current billing, just what the actual lay of the land is right now. How much are we actually charging businesses on Main Street, different configurations, to try and get a sense of what is our rough equivalent dwelling unit, EDU, which is a new thing for me. The idea being, if we charge a house one sewer unit, what do we charge a business? What do we charge, an Atlas business versus a Gimme business, right? Versus some place that doesn't even have a bathroom, potentially for public use, those types of things. Our assumption right now is that we don't have much in the way of consistency in the village, just as it happens, businesses turn over, things change and grow and split and divide. And we probably haven't kept up with reassessing that. But if there is some sort of kind of rough sense of what we're actually doing right now that we can kind of back into, the idea being we'd like to keep the fee schedule relatively stable if we can through this kind of adjustment, while at the same time trying to create some rigor and consistency around it, so it's not just kind of arbitrary, which it likely is veering towards more of right now. So they're looking into that with Tammy, and once they have some more data and running some numbers there, they'll get back to us with that information and some kind of next steps around all that. So that's where that project stands. I'll just keep going, and if people have questions, raise a hand. Stormwater. So just a quick update on this. For those following along at homes, we're looking at doing some stormwater improvements on Seneca Road and Congress. And so MRB has been on site last week for some initial site viewing and what's the word I'm looking for? Surveying, right? For surveying kind of that area. The intent is to then draw up some designs for that and kind of continue moving on that project. So that's where that one stands, looking to get some information back from them after they've kind of sat with that information. And then the last one I have here, though I do still have a couple more to go after that, is Village Hall repairs. There's kind of two threads here. There's been a number of folks that brought up the point that the village exterior specifically really deserves some attention. So I've been talking with Dusty about starting to build out kind of a longer repair list, and figuring out how do we prioritize that and work through that. So that's kind of a longer term project, but just to bring up the idea that is something that's going to get focused on here over the next couple of months. The other, maybe more pressing piece is the HVAC system, making sure that there's sufficient heat in the building for this winter. Thankfully, the weather has been relatively warm recently, but we had a couple cold days and we're still not where we want to be with the heat, even though we've kind of invested in some additional insulation and so forth. So Tom Myers is meeting with Hubbard Heating, I believe this week, to talk about them doing kind of a formal review of the system and the building, the insulation, the heating that we have, and figuring out where we can go with that, both for the front office and the police primarily. So that's also in flight. Finally,
I'm sorry, could I
Yeah.
chime in on village
Sure.
hall repairs? And maybe, is there already a compiled list such to potentially include repainting?
The painting is certainly a big part of it.
I realize the paint doesn't actually keep a house together.
Right. There's definitely some actual structural damage, like wear and tear, that needs addressing. There's obviously just kind of paint and making it look nicer as well.
That the side that the back side, I guess. I'm sorry, with the northeast southwest.
Yeah, the side that faces away from the parking lot.
Yeah, where there's just, plywood or whatever peeling off.
Yeah, there's a lot of mess back in that area. So I'll say near term, there is hope that the police stairs will finally get replaced before it gets to winter outside. There is also a door on that side, Jess, that you're referring to, that's
falling off.
Yeah, falling off. There's a replacement door inside. It needs to get hung and put up. That's also something on Dusty's immediate list in the next couple of weeks is the hope. Though that may delay. We'll have some more conversations in executive session.
Okay. And then not to be super duper Mayberry about it, but I mean, if a painting committee is required in a party, I'm pretty sure we could get this sucker painted.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's two parts here. One is kind of just getting it done, and the other part is kind of building more of a structure where this stuff is kind of more regularly considered and reviewed. So I'm trying to work with Dusty to kind of bring this, and I know he has concerns about other buildings as well. And there is current maintenance that is done at other, like some of the water buildings and so forth. So just kind of really including this in the regular scope of the DPW's business. So trying to work through that.
Web page, right?
Say that, was that?
Looking pretty for our new web page.
Exactly. Yeah, for the good pictures we got to put up on the webpage. So yeah, there's definitely focus on it. That backside is known. There's some conversation about building a little awning over that door as well, because it gets a lot of water, and that's part of the issue that goes on back there. So it's being considered. It will move as quick as it can, but we'll have some staffing conversations about DPW to talk through. And then the very last piece is the cemetery bridge. I know Mark had kind of brought this up. As far as the village is concerned, we're interested in looking at the water mains that are in that area while the bridge work is happening. In talking with Dusty, the key interest of his is that there's a water main that comes down cemetery and dead ends. And then there's a water main on Lake that continues out Lake Street. The dead end on cemetery is both a narrow water main, and a dead end is not great in a water system. So the idea is we're going to get some quotes to see what it would take to connect the water main from cemetery into the water main on Lake while they're doing that bridge work. And depending on what those come back as, have a conversation about what the value would be there. It sounds like that stretch is not a problem yet, but if there was any additional development on that stretch of road, that might be a problem. And just in general, they're going to have a little bit lower water quality with that being a dead end. So it'd be nice to kind of connect that all through and create a loop out of that. So that is yet another in-flight project. Lots going on with MRB and other engineering firms in the DPW. And I think that's it. Any other questions?
Any questions for Ben?
I have a full-time project manager now.
Okay, well, thanks, Ben. Next up is police. Keith.
Okay, we'll start with the, Jesus, nailed my computer. Just start with the statistical review for October. 199 calls, 4 calls outside the village, assisting the state police and Tompkins Sheriff's Department for service in the town of Ulysses, and 2 assist the Tompkins County Sheriff Department. Mostly property and residential checks, a couple domestic disputes, and 3 harassment complaints. Would like to say thank you to not only the police department, but the fire department as well, for Chief Taylor helping out on Halloween, and DPW for getting all of our barricades out on somewhat short notice. Everything got set up and dropped off, set up, taken down, and picked up, I think, in a really timely fashion. So much appreciated on that front. Chief Nelson was around Halloween night. Officer Covert was also patrolling Halloween night, and it's a Bob Seger song, isn't it? Hollywood Nights, something like that. And then Officer Nelson was on bike patrol on Halloween night, going around the village, which I thought was really nice to see him out using the bike. And you know, they were trying to make conversation with everyone, see how everyone was doing, if they were enjoying it. Feedback was, as everyone else has mentioned, was really positive. So you know, there was a little bit of trepidation on the department's part on, you know, what it would look like to close streets and would it encourage more crowds than we want, that kind of thing. But everyone stood by it, and I think it went really well. So thanks to all involved for making that happen, and for thanks to Rorden for taking all the phone calls from the county health department who were concerned about us and trying to guide us.
Keith, can I echo and add weight to the thanks for the police officer on the bicycle that I heard? I was actually out with my son trick-or-treating, and they were it just felt really appropriate to them. It felt approachable, it felt comfortable. And so just really grateful for the bicycle presence.
Yes, I will pass that on. Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's nice to see all of that out there. You know, the department, as we talked about in our first executive order police reform meeting with the community. You know, we talked about that philosophy that Chief Nelson brought to the department and trying to make that more consistent. And I think we were going in a really good direction there for a while, and then COVID kind of hit, and it makes it hard to have a community presence when you're supposed to be away from the community. So I thought it was nice for us to kind of have the opportunity to do that in a very supportive way. The department was also out, I think, two Fridays ago. We had received a grant to help distribute information on crosswalk awareness. And so we had a couple officers out on Main Street handing out crosswalk information. Might seem a little bit, I don't know, over the top, but you don't have to stand on our Main Street for too many minutes to see a lot of cars that come by and go through a lot of crosswalks in a short amount of time. So especially on our Main Street, I think it was a nice thing to do. And we had another accident this evening on Main Street, car pulling out and hit a motorcyclist who had to be airlifted. And, you know, just standing in front of Gimme Saturday morning, well, I go down there every morning, and I'm always just kind of shake my head at sometimes the speed and size of the vehicles that come through our Main Street. But on Saturday, there were 2 near misses within 5 minutes of me standing out inside of Gimme. So I think we've talked a little bit about, you know, what can we do to our Main Street? I think it was June June 2019 that I communicated with the Highway Department, New York State Department of Transportation, and asked them about, guidance or looking into a study, and they said they would put it on the list. Haven't heard an update yet, but I think maybe that's another discussion for another time. Just different measures we can do to, again, keep pushing for that. Maybe a couple of these recent accidents on Main Street might be something we can forward on and say, hey, are you still looking into this? So it's it's always an area of concern for me. I don't know how much we can do about it. I know we can't really lower the speed limit to anything below 30, but just that stretch from basically the word of mouth to Little Venice, just seems like there's always potential for an issue there. So I think that's really all I have. As much as I'd like to come up with more to say. No, I'm just kidding. I think that's good, unless anyone else has any questions
Any questions for Keith?
or comments.
Okay, Vicky, you're up.
Not, the office has been fairly slow, but we did have our audit last week. The auditors were only there a couple days. They were down in the boardroom. It seemed to go very smoothly. I think that between Morgan and I and Tammy, that we got them everything that they needed. I didn't receive any emails today that they needed additional information, so I'm hoping it's a really good audit this year. Other than that, just it's time for kind of cleanup stuff. I know that you're all probably looking for October's numbers. We haven't received the bank statements yet, but I will get on that as soon as they come in. I guess the one thing, I don't know if there was a decision made about reviewing what we were doing about depositing to reserves. Were we going to wait till the December meeting to do that?
No, I think you can probably, well, yeah, let me see what we have when you close October.
Okay.
But otherwise, I think you can probably go with as budgeted unless something pops in that month-end report.
Okay, no, that's not a problem. Nobody's asked for anything that wasn't already there, so we're good with that. Other than that, just trying to answer any requests that come in for information. Poor Ben Darfler, NICEAG's not agreeing with him about numbers. So if you need anything, feel free to email or ask.
I'm sure I'll hear back from NICEAG by 2021 at some point.
I know, seems that way, doesn't it? So that's all I have.
Okay, any questions for Vicky? All right, Morgan, you're up.
So we sent out water bills last week. And the only other thing I have is the total balance of unpaid taxes is $27,845.59.
So every year at this time, I don't know if Jessica's familiar with this. Every year at this time, the unpaid balance of any a village tax receipts, we re-levy to the county. The county actually pays us that balance and makes us whole. And then they add that dollar amount to the respective people's property tax bills for their town and county tax bill that comes out in January. I will say that this dollar amount is the lowest dollar amount I have ever seen. So that's 14 years worth. I doubt it's the lowest number ever, but it's certainly the lowest number I've seen. So that's certainly a good thing. Property tax, I will say, was one that I was concerned about coming into property tax season in the middle. Well, June is when the bills went out, and we had just come out of a shutdown, so I didn't know what that was going to look like. So I'm glad that it's a lower number than in the past. We have to, and I would entertain a motion to re-levy unpaid village tax bills to the county. We are supposed to physically sign this. However, there is an electronic version, which is acceptable under current executive order, which I think all of you should have received from Tammy. The DocuSign type. Hopefully you got it this afternoon. If you didn't, then she will have to resend it. I got, when did that come in? Came in around 1:55 this afternoon. So if you haven't gotten it, ask her for it. We do need to all individually sign the re-levy, which I would now entertain a motion to do that.
So moved.
I can. Yeah, I don't have an email here, but I'll request
Neither
it.
do I.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have one either.
Well, at least it's not just me, because that was feeling a little awkward.
Any comments, questions, or discussion on the re-levy motion? Hearing none, then all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And it carries unanimously. Anything else, Morgan?
Nope.
Okay.
Could we ask Morgan to communicate with Tammy for the resend, since there's several of us that didn't get it?
Yes, Morgan, if you would let Tammy know that I was the only one that received the affidavit. And actually, you know what? Let me sign it. I wonder if it's a chain. It might be a sequential signature.
Good call.
And then if that doesn't work, then she'll have to resend it.
Also, that makes it kind of fun. When's it gonna come? Who signed it?
And in what order?
If you pass it along to
Okay.
3 more of your friends and ask them to all send
Right.
you.
If it goes to Carver next, we know he's the most important.
Well, he's deputy, so he should
I
be.
know.
All right. Item number 7 is old business village website redesign. One more thing on
Yes.
Ben's plate.
You know, I was getting bored. So in the Dropbox are the 3 options, which I emailed around to everybody. Actually, maybe before we jump to those, there's a matter of payment. Typical payment for the structure is just a monthly credit card cost or charge. But in talking with Vicky, sounds like we would be better served, I think, not unlike kind of we just did for EMS, to approve that way of a monthly billing via credit card. So this is to refresh everybody's memory. We had a quote a while back. I didn't bring it forward into this month's Dropbox, but it's $200 a month, so $2,400 for the year, charged monthly. So I would make a motion to for us to pay this to pay FLX software $200 monthly via credit card charge for services for the website. Not just the redesign for the website. So it'll be kind of it's a constant fee for hosting, website redesign, the whole works.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, then all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right.
Great. So then the other part is are the 3 different options. I'd sent this around a couple of times. it's not super late by our standards, but in the interest of keeping this brief, I don't think we need to spend a ton of time kind of hammering through all the differences. Though if people have opinions they'd like to voice now on the different designs, I'd love to hear them. But I do want to get back to FLX software by the end of the week. So if you haven't had a chance to look at them, please do, and return any thoughts by the end of the week. I know Rorden, you had some, but I'm open for other people to have ideas as well, input.
Yeah, we can certainly discuss this. We can certainly discuss this via email. It's just a design options. My attraction to B was purely first blush. I'm not overly married to it. So whatever everyone else, if you would just send back, option A, B, or C and comments to Ben.
And if there's parts of like one that you like of the other, like a style of one, but maybe the layout of the other, those types of things, all good feedback. Yeah, so please do take a moment this week.
Yeah, I think I was in the minority, but I also liked B because I know you want this in email, but I'll just quickly say that I liked that it felt a little like it had some chamber info type stuff built in, like about the village, and it was all, I like it being icon based in that area versus text based. You kind of get your village essentials up top, then you kind of get more like explore the village kind of stuff right after that. I don't know. So that's what spoke to me. I like the idea that it's not just government notices, it's learn about the village.
Yeah, that is one thing I've been pushing in general. And I know part of why we kind of decided to undertake this was the recognition that, we're not just the face of the municipality, but we're the face of the whole village and the businesses and whatnot that goes on here. So I've been pushing very clearly that there should be spots for, visit here and live here have been kind of the two additional sections that we don't currently have that I think we need to incorporate. So that's a good point.
And for that very reason, I liked C. I thought that the whole block at the bottom really made the check out our town features pop, but I should confess that I think it's the colors. I think that the pictures on option C were more compelling in general, though, and I just sent the email saying it, though there's an overabundance of quick access. So I think that's my vote.
All right. Yeah. So, if folks if it's able to kind of pull apart a little bit of like the design and the content, if at all. But it sounds like we've got, I don't know, a little bit leaning towards B maybe. But that people are liking the blend of municipal and kind of chamber related information.
And actually, Ben, if everyone else weighs in on B, I think that I would be content if the pictures were better and there's maybe some more color blocks. Like it made it feel less jangly. B looks really busy to me, but the versus C, right? Like, oh, just more black and white. Can we just make the world a little bit more clear cut? I'm talking to you in your haircut. Okay.
I will say the only thing I didn't like about A is it felt a little bit like generic Gannett newspaper website. It looks like I'm looking at the Ithaca Journal a little bit, but I can get over that.
I think you're right, and I think that's kind of why I liked it. But I also, now that you put that finger on it, I see why like B actually has a bit more of, like it feels like a municipality website, which has its own value too.
I have to dig up somewhere. I have the .gov domain requirements for things like business information and non-government things. So we need to make sure we don't get too all-encompassing, unfortunately.
Okay, that's a good point. Yeah. All right, I think I'm gonna lean back towards B, but if you've got any other additions, like what you'd like to see slightly tweaked on B or anything like that, definitely send those forward and I'll compile that all and send it along. Great.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you, Ben, for all the work on that. Any other old business? Any items of new business? Then let's move on to paying some bills, approval of abstracts. Starting with a general fund abstract in the amount of $468,965.33.
I'll move that we approve that abstract.
I'll second it.
And I meant to bring this up in my report, but just to bring your attention to line 6833 and those few, that's the tree reimbursements just that we talked about last month, just so everyone knows.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
It's just fairly large because we have retirement and the final payment of the ambulance in there.
Yeah, I noticed those retirements. Is that we pay that quarterly, annually?
We pay annually.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I thought I didn't recall seeing them frequently.
And this way we get, if we pay them by December 15th, we get about a $3,000 discount than waiting till February to pay them.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments? Hearing none, then all in favor of approving this abstract, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Our next abstract is the EMS billing abstract totaling $14,175.
I move that we pay this abstract.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? We have a water fund abstract totaling $52,825.90.
I move that we pay this abstract.
Second.
Any comments or questions? You'll see retirement system payments in there too. It's just doesn't mention individuals. If there are no questions, and all in favor of paying the water fund abstract, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Sewer fund abstract in the amount of $20,657.27.
Move that we approve that abstract.
Second.
A motion and a second. Now, any discussion? If not, then all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And last but not least is the trust and agency abstract totaling $3,875.87.
I'll move that we pay that abstract.
Second.
Any discussion?
Where's the consortium?
Good question. Vicky, this is the rebated month, right?
You're muted.
You're muted, Vic.
We paid the abstract from the consortium at the last payday. The one we just got will be it's actually in December, which
December.
was a 0-1.
So the consortium, because to your question, Ben, well, let's take care of this first. Any other questions on the trust and agency abstract? All in favor of paying it as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So I was going to save it for next month, but due to a significant reduction in claims payment this year to the tune of $8 million due to elective surgeries being canceled during the COVID-related lockdowns and shutdowns. We have a significant overage in premium collected for things that never happened. So the consortium made after almost 7 months of discussion, the consortium made the decision to rebate 1 month's worth of payment, 1 month worth of premium to all its membership, which would include a non-collection of premiums from employees. So it'll be a relief to employees as well as the employer. That 1 month represents about 4.9 million, which is being rebated from the consortium back to the municipalities. So that's why you won't see it on next month's abstract either.
Which side of that fence were you on, Martin?
I had no problem with the rebate. I mean, it was interesting to see the claims drop off in April and May. I mean, it was precipitous. It was, the consortium averages about 4.9 million a month in claims processing and payments, and it went from whatever 4.9 to 2.5 overnight. So that's the other discussion was whether or not to be adjusting premiums going forward, but that gets into a sticky math situation where you're not compounding at the correct rate and you run out of money in year 6, that kind of thing. But certainly rebating what wasn't needed this year, that was a pretty easy call. The mechanism was what we spent a lot of time figuring out how to do it. And of course, making it fair to the employees. There has to be a mechanism to not collect their premiums. You have collectively bargained contracts all over the county, which are going to get questioned by all of this. So devil is in the details. Brings us to item number 10 on our agenda, which is our second public comment period. We don't have anyone from the public, but if Mark or Ann has anything else they'd like to say before we bid adieu for the evening.
I'll say goodnight.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, guys and girls and women and men.
Right.
I'm good, thank you. And thank you for the 3,000 for the broadband. I appreciate that.
Yes, you're welcome, and thank you. And I will send that resolution on to you and Jason here shortly.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Guess I really wanted to leave.
What does this button do? And if there's no additional public business, I would entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss multiple personnel issues as well as a potential legal matter.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, let me pause the recording and the stream.